So in this lab exercise, coin toss with loop and accumulator, we're going to modify our coin toss code from an earlier lab exercise so that it tosses a coin 10 times and a keeps a running total or accumulator of how many heads and tails that our program generated. So at the end of your program, you must display the total number of heads and tails, right? So very first thing that we should do, we should import our random module, right? Because we want to generate a random number between 0 and 1. Where we're using 0 to represent heads, and we're going to use tails to represent, we're going to use 1 to represent tails, right? And so we also want to create a coin toss variable, and that coin toss variable is going to generate a random number between 0 and 1. All right, we only need two numbers because we only have two sides of a coin. So we're going to say random.randint, and we're going to generate a random number between 0 and 1. Okay, right. So next thing that we should do, we can create our conditional statement to say that whatever number is generated by this coin toss variable, is it going to be 0 or 1? Or in other words, is it going to be heads or tails? So we want to say if coin toss, okay, if this coin toss variable is equal to heads, we want to print heads, okay? If it doesn't generate 0, we want to print tails, okay? Quite simple. You've seen this before, okay? We've actually seen this before. And so what we should do next is we should create a count variable or an accumulator, right? We want to count how many times that we printed heads, and we want to count how many times that we printed tails. So we're going to create two other variables. We're going to call them heads count, okay, heads underscore count is equal to 0, and tails underscore count is equal to 0, right? Both of them start off at 0. Next thing that we should do, we should create our for loop, right? Because if we look inside of our requirements, it says we want to modify your code, your coin toss code, so that it tosses a coin 10 times. So we need to create a for loop, and the range is going to be 10. Okay, the range is going to be 10. And we want to indent our conditional statement inside of that for loop. So you can highlight that code and hit tab. Okay, or if you just want to do it from scratch, you can say if coin toss is equal to heads. You want to print heads. Okay, and after we printed heads, we also want to add 1 on to head count. Right, so every time that coin toss is equal to 0, every time that coin toss variable generates 0, we want to print heads. We also want to add 1 to heads count. So we're going to say heads count is plus equal 1. And remember that is just a shorthand or a shortcut for heads underscore count is equal to heads underscore count plus 1. Okay, I prefer the shorthand. So again, if coin toss doesn't generate 0, in other words, if it generates 1, we can include an else. And we could say print tails. And we can add 1 to tails count every time that coin toss doesn't generate 0. Okay, so at the end of our program, we actually want to print. So we want to come outside of our for loop. Okay, very important to come outside of your for loop. So we're going to print how many times that we have heads. So I'm going to say heads, comma, heads count. I'm going to include another print function that says tails, comma, tails, comma. Okay, so let's run our program. Let's see what we have so far. So we actually, wow, that's that is very strange. So we have no heads, all tails. Right, lucky day for tails. Let's run our program again. Again. Hmm. Can anybody tell me what is happening? What is the issue? Why am I getting all heads or why am I getting all tails? Okay, you're breaking up a bit. Can you say that again?
It's only focusing on the head counting of the tails.
But I got tails the other time that I ran my code, mind you. So I'm getting all heads or either all tails.
You need to put your coin toss variable inside the loop.
And he's absolutely correct. Because if I keep this outside of taking a look on line 11, right? If I kept this outside of my loop, this is only running once. And so it's either going to be 0 or 1. It's not going to keep looping and generating 10 random numbers because it's outside of the for loop, right? So what happens when I cut this out and I include it inside of my for loop, that's going to generate 10, well, not 10 different numbers, but this is going to generate 10 times. So it's never going to give me either 0 or 1. It's going to include both. Okay, so if I run this code, and then you see we have a mixture of either heads or tails. Right? So again, anything outside of that for loop is only running once. Anything inside of this for loop is running 10 times. Okay, I hope everyone understands that. So let me run again. So we have heads 5 times and tails 5 times, so it's even. But again, we have heads 3 and tails 3. Okay, and yeah, that is lab exercise, coin toss with loop and accumulator.